Zimbabwe faces a stern test holding its own constitution, especially ahead of the 2028 general elections, where incumbent President Emmerson Mnangagwa is supposed to step down and pass power to a new president. President Mnangagwa, who came to power via a coup, appears to be mapping a plan that would keep him in office longer. This plan, according to Douglas Monzora, leader of fallen opposition political party MDC, has the backing of parliamentarians from across the political divide.
Let's now lengthen the term of office of the president. So instead of 5 years, it's going to be 10 years, 7 years. So it's 5 years will end in 2028, the other 2 years in 2030. That is why we have that slogan now, 2030 Day Leadership. Unfortunately, some members of parliament are agreeing to this because they want to stay in parliament for as long as possible. So you have a major issue that is coming in this country. And we have an answer to that. We have an answer to that Professor Maduku. And we have section 328 that we crafted. And when we were crafting this section, I felt that it was going to be important. So I kept the manuscript. I still have the longhand written part of that section. And this section says, you cannot extend a term limit, but should you want to extend a term limit, you go to referendum. Right? Should you pass at the referendum, should you achieve a yes at the referendum, and there is an extension of term, that extension shall not benefit the incumbent. You see? So that is one of the smart things that we did, Professor.
In the face of what appears numerous violations of the Constitution by the ruling Zanu PF, including stealing of elections and gross abuse of human rights, opposition political parties have tried turning to SADC. Most often than not, they have hit a brick wall, especially as the heads of state stand shoulder to shoulder in defense of each other. In the 2023 general elections, the SADC Observe Mission declared that the polls have been tampered with, but heads of state, who mostly come from former liberation parties, have defended Mnangagwa and backed his stay in power. CCC Deputy Spokesperson Ostalos Siziba had a piece of advice for the old.
The liberation projects in the African context have been moving with this banner of solidarity with liberation movements. Our advice to our friends in the region and in South Africa in particular, that you ought to understand that what countries must be in solidarity with are not political parties. They must be in solidarity with the people. The Liberation Project was anchored on people-to-people solidarity, not party-to-party. So liberation movement ought to go beyond just giving solidarity to their sister liberation parties, but give solidarity to the people of Zimbabwe. Because when we stand with South Africans, we are not standing not just with political parties, but we stand with the people of South Africans because we are Africans. We are inspired by the spirit of Ubuntu, but also our shared historical experiences. So political parties who participate in the Liberation Project ought to understand when their sister parties bastardize the agenda of the liberation struggle, they ought to support progressive parties, because when they support progressive citizens, they are supporting what was at the core of the liberation struggle. ZANU is not a party for the future. It is part of the past. One can be a hero in two struggles. ZANU was key. In fact, Zipra and Zanla were critical in the liberation of our country to give us political independence. But it is on that basis that we have to launch the struggle for economic freedom and emancipation. That struggle cannot be waged by Patrick Chamisa or Emmerson Mnangagwa or Christopher Mtswangwa. They are historic. They cannot understand the fourth industrial revolution, nanotechnology, and the future of our country and that of the continent. So they ought to rest. Leaders come and go. That is the culture that we want, and that was democracy is all about. So we ought to appeal to their conscience and make them understand that what is needed in this country is that beyond political independence, our people ought to get table water. Our people ought to get food at the table. Our people ought to get proper roads and proper health care. That is what all we want. That's what Zimbabweans want. They don't want slogans. They don't want history. They don't want scarf. They don't want thieves in the form of Chivhayo and that other one that has just been quoted by saying they want democracy, they want freedom of speech. Students want to research freely in universities. Even those in Zanu don't want just to be called to go and welcome a thug and a thief in airports. They want to be given clean water and education. That's what Zimbabweans want, not to be given $10 to spend time on microblogging sites like Twitter insulting progressive citizens. That's not what the liberation struggle was all about. It was political freedom and, more importantly, economic freedom. Thank you very much.
Monzora has also written off SADC as a fair abater to Zimbabwe's problems or those in the region instead saying the solutions are internal.
SADC is SADC. It also means that liberation movements will tend to support one another no matter what happens. Unfortunately, in this country, the opposition did not speak with the same. I had indicated to the other members that we should totally boycott the election. That would have then created sufficient ground for the intervention of other countries. But there were some political parties who went into the election anyway and sanitized the election. They went into the election and made it look like there had been an electoral contest in Zimbabwe. And now they are crying foul. Now they understand that the delimitation should have been done and so on. We have to live with the fact that there are slow political learners in this country. We also have to live with the reality that we have people in this country who feed our people with false hope. For example, our people were being told that there is going to be a new election that is going to be run by SADC, when it is a complete falsehood, and it is Ramaphosa and members of all the countries in the SADC had congratulated President Mnangagwa anyway. And reversing that would mean reversing their congratulatory message. Liberation movements don't do that. They stick together. They are a club. And the sooner people learn about that, the better.
The contested election of 2023 were pinned on the failure of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to conduct its affairs independently and instead increasingly looking as if they were cheerleading Zanu PF to the finish line. Political players have been demanding that ZEC must be independent. However, Monzora, who is also a leading constitutional lawyer, says these calls are utopian.
There are subcommittees under ZEC which are populated by people from the President's Office, Foreign Affairs Ministry, Justice Ministry, Home Affairs Ministry. So we have executive people supporting or being the secretariat of an independent body. So the body cannot be independent. Right now, the Minister of Justice has power of the purse over the Zimbabwe Election Commission. So we need a truly independent ZEC. We also need an independent judiciary, because the judges, especially the judges under Chief Justice, the current Chief Justice, have done a disservice in this country. They have reduced the election petitions into overly technical issues. And as a result, they have tended to do injustice. So we need an independent judiciary, we need an independent ZEC.
With 4 years away from another election, Zanu PF is already consolidating its grip on power by leveraging its influence in the real levers of power. Opponents allege the judiciary is captured, police and army politicized, and the elections management body ZEC lacks independence and people running scared. It's a game that seems never ending, a cycle repeating itself cycle after cycle. Tanisha Gawa, HSTV News, Harare.